Hello everyone, this is Professor Sexton with a very brief video lecture on common sentence errors and coordinating conjunctions. This video lecture is going to be in conjunction with two course documents that are located in the course document tabs of Blackboard. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go over these briefly, but you want to make sure that you review these documents for yourself. So the first one that I'm going to share with you is the one entitled Common Sentence Errors. As I do with all of these video lectures, I am not going to go over them verbatim or word for word, but I just want to draw your attention to some of the key things to take in mind when you're exploring these documents for yourself. In terms of common sentence errors, there are typically three that we tend to make more often as writers. One of the first one is a comma splice. And what a comma splice is when a comma is used incorrectly to join two independent clauses. And let me back up and tell you what an independent clause is. An independent clause is a group of words that has both the subject, a verb, and can stand independently. So in other words, it's a complete sentence. But what happens is sometimes as writers, we join two complete sentences or independent clauses with a comma splice, with a comma, and that's incorrect. And so that is called a comma splice. So let me draw your attention to this first example in the document. Notice this sentence here: the cafeteria food has improved. The cafeteria is your subject. The cafeteria food is your subject. Has improved is your predicate. This together is a complete sentence. But then notice here you have the school privatized the operation. The school is your subject, privatized the operation is your predicate. So once you have here, you have another complete sentence. The mistake here is that the author has joined both of these independent clauses with a comma, and this is a comma splice, which is incorrect. There are four ways to correct a comma splice. The simplest thing to do is just to make them two complete sentences. So change the comma into a period and then capitalize the first word of the next sentence, as in this example. Another thing that you can do is if the two sentences are closely related, you can use a semicolon to join the two of them. If you use a semicolon to join the two of them, you do not need to capitalize the word that follows the semicolon, but also you want to use this option sparingly. Only use a semicolon to join two independent clauses if those two sentences are closely related. If they are not closely related, you don't want to use this option. A more complex way to join two complete sentences is to use a comma and a coordinating conjunction. There are seven coordinating conjunctions: for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. However, they cannot be used interchangeably because the coordinating conjunctions mean different things. So you want to make sure that you're using the correct coordinating conjunction for the context of your sentence. The only grammar rule that you need to know here is if you're combining two complete sentences with a coordinating conjunction, the comma comes before the coordinating conjunction, such as here. And then the other way that you can correct a comma splice is by making one of the clauses dependent. A dependent clause will have a subject and a verb, but it is a group of words that cannot stand by itself as a sentence because it is incomplete or it does not give full information. For instance, if you had the group of words, since the school privatized the operation, by itself, that is not complete. It does not give a complete thought. But what you can do is, if you combine that dependent clause with an independent clause, then you are having a complete sentence. So let's read this one. The cafeteria has improved since the school privatized the operation. There's just one little thing that you will need to do. I'm sorry that, okay, the file is back up. There's just one little thing that you need to know here. If the independent clause comes at the beginning of the sentence, then you don't need a punctuation mark between the independent clause and the dependent clause. However, if the dependent clause comes at the beginning of the sentence, then you need a comma between the dependent clause and the independent clause. So look at this example. Since the school privatized the operation, comma, the cafeteria food has improved. The reason why we put the comma there is because the dependent clause comes first. So those are the 4 ways to correct a comma splice. The next grammatical mistake is called a run-on sentence. A run-on sentence is just like a comma splice. The only difference is that with a run-on sentence, there is no punctuation mark at all between the two sentences. So look at this one. It's the same example from before. The cafeteria food has improved, which is an independent clause in a complete sentence. The school privatized the operation, which is an independent clause in a complete sentence. However, this is a run-on sentence, sometimes also called a fuse sentence, because what you have is you have 2 complete sentences together and nothing that indicates where one sentence stops and another one begins. You correct a run-on or a fuse sentence the same way you correct a comma splice. So you either make them 2 separate sentences, you either use a semicolon between the 2 of them, you add the comma in a coordinating conjunction, or you make one a dependent clause. So the same way that you correct a comma splice is the same way that you will correct a run-on sentence. The last type of common sentence error is a fragment. And what a fragment is, that is a group of words that do not express a complete thought. Fragments can exist in 2 types of ways. Sometimes it's a fragment because the group of words is missing a subject and or verb. Like for instance, if you have, for example, my mother's best friend, there's no verb there, so that is not a complete sentence. Or behind the baseball field, once again, there's no verb there. There's not a complete sentence. Another time is that you have a dependent clause. So remember when we were just talking about ways to correct comma splices and run-on sentences, a fuse sentence, where we said that we can change one to a dependent clause. A dependent clause has a subject and a verb, such as this example, I exercise. But notice that with the word even though, it makes a dependent clause because it's not complete. So if you were to read this as one sentence, even though I exercised all summer, period. Yes, it has a subject. Yes, it has a verb, but it is not a complete thought. So that constitutes a fragment. With fragments, there are various ways to correct fragments. You either need to provide the missing subject or the verb, change the dependent clause to an independent one, or join the fragment to the sentence before or after it. So with fragments, there are numerous ways to correct them. And what you have on the bottom of this page is the different ways that you can correct those fragments. I want to share one more document with you. Let us go back, and I'm not going to go over this document in detail, but remember earlier when I talked to you in this lecture about the different coordinating conjunctions and how they can mean different things. What this second document does is it tells you what a coordinating conjunction means. So as I said before, there are 7: for, and, nor, but, or, yet, or so. And what this document does, it tells you that and adds information, which is similarities, but is a contrast, contradicts, yet also contradicts, but does so more strongly, or gives you a choice. For is because, so is as a result, and nor removes an alternative. So these are the different coordinating conjunctions and what they mean. So you want to make sure that you review this document as well, so you can get a sense of what those coordinating conjunctions mean. Realistically, you can function with just 3, and, but, and or. But for variation of your writing and to show sophistication, you want to use all 7 of them. So make sure that you read this carefully and understand what they, how they function. and how to use them in your sentences. So as I said before, what you want to do is you want to go back and review both of these documents, read them very carefully and closely so you make sure that you understand the information that is in both of them. Okay, thank you. Bye.